The day the aliens arrived, humanity's understanding of the universe changed forever. It wasn't a grand entrance filled with explosions or dramatic speeches. Instead, it began quietly. One moment, Earth was alone in its corner of space. The next, an enormous alien ship appeared without warning, hovering silently above the planet's atmosphere like a colossal mirror reflecting sunlight. The vessel stretched miles across, smooth and metallic, shimmering with colors that seemed to shift depending on how you looked at it. No one knew where it had come from or why it was here. All they knew was that it was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Governments scrambled to respond. Emergency meetings were called, military forces mobilized, and scientists worked around the clock trying to make sense of what they were seeing. Fighter jets were dispatched to investigate, their engines roaring as they approached the mysterious craft. Pilots circled cautiously, attempting to communicate over radio frequencies. But there was no response. Finally, someone gave the order, fire a warning shot. A missile streaked toward the alien ship, leaving a trail of smoke behind it. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the impact. But instead of exploding, the missile simply fizzled out, against the hull of the ship vanishing into thin air. The reaction came almost immediately. A voice boomed through every communication device on Earth, not loud or aggressive, but calm and mocking. "Your weapons are primitive," the voice said in perfect English, dripping with condescension. "You cannot harm us." Humanity froze. For centuries, people had speculated about first contact with extraterrestrial life, imagining everything from peaceful exchanges to devastating wars. But this was humiliation. The aliens weren't just superior, they were openly laughing at humanity's feeble attempts to defend itself. News outlets went wild with coverage. Every channel broadcast live footage of the alien ship looming overhead, interspersed with clips of fighter jets firing futile shots at its impenetrable surface. Social media exploded with memes and jokes, though many masked deep-seated fear. Some people tried to carry on with their lives, pretending nothing had changed, while others panicked, stockpiling food and supplies in case of invasion. Governments issued statements urging calm, but even world leaders couldn't hide their unease. Behind closed doors, emergency councils debated whether negotiation was possible, or if humanity should prepare for war despite knowing they stood no chance. Amidst the chaos, Dr. Emily Carter sat in her cluttered office at the Global Research Institute, staring at the screen displaying the alien ship. Unlike most people, she wasn't paralyzed by fear or despair. Her mind raced with questions. What kind of technology could create such a seemingly indestructible object? How did the aliens communicate so effortlessly in human languages? And, most importantly, was there any way to fight back? Emily wasn't a soldier or politician, she was a physicist, known for her unconventional ideas and relentless curiosity. Over the years, she'd earned both admiration and ridicule for her bold theories, many of which challenged established scientific norms. Now, however, she felt certain that traditional methods wouldn't work against these invaders. If humanity wanted to survive, they needed to think differently. Emily's assistant, Alex Chen, burst into the room, his face pale. "Did you hear them?" he asked breathlessly. "They're calling our weapons primitive. Can you believe that?" "I can," Emily replied, her tone measured. She turned to face him, her sharp eyes gleaming with determination. "But I also believe we underestimate ourselves. We've been building weapons based on brute force for decades, but maybe it's time to try something smarter." Alex frowned. "Like what?" They shrugged off missiles like they were toys. "That's because we're playing their game," Emily explained, pacing the room. "We're focusing on physical destruction, but what if we target something deeper, something fundamental to their existence?" Alex stared at her, unsure whether to take her seriously. Before he could respond, her computer pinged with an alert. Emily leaned closer, her expression shifting from contemplation to excitement. On the screen was a scanned document from classified government archives, a relic from the Cold War era. Decades ago, scientists had theorized about creating energy-based weapons capable of disrupting matter at a subatomic level. These designs relied on principles of quantum mechanics far ahead of their time and were eventually abandoned due to technological limitations. To everyone else, they were little more than science fiction. But to Emily, they represented hope. "This is it," she whispered, tapping the screen. "If we can harness quantum energy, we might be able to destabilize their ship, not by attacking it physically, but by breaking it apart from within." Alex raised an eyebrow. "You really think we can build something like that? Even if we could, we'd need resources, funding, and permission." Emily smiled faintly. "Leave that part to me." Over the next few days, Emily poured all her energy into drafting a proposal. She included detailed calculations, simulations, and historical context, making sure her argument was airtight. Then, armed with data and determination, she requested an audience with General Marcus Hale, head of Earth's Joint Defense Forces. Getting past layers of bureaucracy proved challenging, but Emily refused to give up. When she finally stood before the general, she didn't mince words. "Sir," she began, meeting his skeptical gaze, "our current strategies won't work. The aliens have already demonstrated that they're immune to conventional weapons. If we want to stand a chance, we need to innovate." General Hale listened patiently, his arms crossed. He was a grizzled man in his late 50s, hardened by years of service and deeply pragmatic. At first glance, he dismissed Emily as another academic chasing pipe dreams. But when she showed him animated simulations of her proposed weapon, a device capable of collapsing matter at a molecular level, he hesitated. There was something compelling about her conviction, something that made him pause. "And you're saying this is feasible?" he asked, leaning forward. "It is," Emily replied firmly. "With the right support, we can build it, but we'll need access to classified research facilities, cutting-edge equipment, and complete autonomy." The general studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. "All right, Doctor, you've got your shot. But if this fails, the consequences will fall squarely on your shoulders." Emily nodded, her heart pounding with a mix of relief and responsibility. As she left the meeting, she knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. Building the weapon would require not only technical expertise, but also cooperation from governments, militaries, and private sectors, all while keeping the project secret from prying eyes. Yet, despite the odds, she felt a spark of optimism. Humanity might have been caught off guard, but they weren't defeated yet. With ingenuity and perseverance, they still had a fighting chance. Back in her lab, Emily gathered her team and laid out the plan. For weeks they worked tirelessly, poring over equations, running tests, and assembling components scavenged from particle accelerators and experimental reactors. Progress was slow and setbacks frequent, but Emily never lost sight of the bigger picture. Each failure brought them closer to success. Each obstacle sharpened their resolve. Outside, the world continued to reel from the presence of the alien ship, torn between fear and fascination. Inside the lab, however, there was only focus, a shared belief that humanity's survival depended on their ability to adapt and innovate. As the days turned into months, whispers of rebellion began to wane, spread among the population. Protesters took to the streets, demanding action from their leaders. Conspiracy theories flourished, blaming governments for incompetence or collusion with the aliens. Meanwhile, fringe groups launched attacks on infrastructure, accusing authorities of failing to protect them. Through it all, Emily remained steadfast, driven by the knowledge that panic wouldn't solve anything. Only science and a willingness to embrace radical solutions could turn the tide. By the time the prototype was nearing completion, the aliens had grown bolder. Smaller probes descended from the mothership, scanning cities and disabling military installations with ease. In New York City, tanks lined the streets only to be rendered useless moments later. Videos of the incidents flooded social media, capturing the absurdity of humanity's helplessness. People laughed nervously, cried openly, or simply stared in stunned silence. Yet amidst the turmoil, a small group of scientists toiled away in secrecy, determined to change the course of history. Emily often stayed late into the night, fine-tuning the device she called the Quantum Disruptor Array, QDA. It resembled a giant satellite dish mounted on a mobile platform, designed to emit concentrated beams of exotic particles capable of destabilizing matter. Testing revealed promising results. It could vaporize solid objects instantly, but doubts lingered. Would it truly work against the alien ship? Or would it fail spectacularly, leaving humanity even more vulnerable than before? Despite the uncertainty, Emily pressed on, fueled by a quiet confidence that humanity's greatest strength lay not in its weapons, but in its capacity to dream and create. As the final pieces fell into place, the aliens delivered their ultimatum. Their voice echoed across every corner of the globe, chilling in its finality. As the days following the alien arrival stretched into weeks, humanity's initial shock began to give way to a mix of fear, frustration, and defiance. The massive alien ship remained stationary above Earth's atmosphere, its shimmering surface reflecting sunlight in mesmerizing patterns. Despite its seemingly peaceful posture, the message it had broadcasted, "Your weapons are primitive. You cannot harm us," echoed ominously in the minds of everyone on the planet. It wasn't just an insult. It was a declaration of superiority that left humanity feeling powerless. The aliens didn't stop there. Smaller probes detached from the mothership, descending into Earth's airspace with eerie precision. These sleek, metallic drones moved effortlessly through the sky, scanning cities, military bases, and power plants. At first, they merely observed, their presence unsettling but non-threatening. However, as time went on, their actions grew bolder. In New York City, one such probe hovered over a battalion of tanks and artillery pieces assembled for defense. Soldiers aimed their weapons, firing everything they had, bullets, missiles, even experimental laser cannons. But none of it made the slightest dent. The probe responded by emitting a pulse of energy that disabled every vehicle and weapon within seconds, leaving the soldiers staring helplessly at their useless equipment. Videos of the incident spread like wildfire across social media. People watched in stunned silence as the once proud machines of war were rendered obsolete in moments. Comments ranged from disbelief to dark humor, with memes flooding platforms like Twitter and TikTok. One popular post showed a cartoon soldier throwing rocks at the probe, captioned, "When your missiles fail, go old school." While some laughed nervously, others felt a deep sense of despair. The message was clear. Humanity's most advanced technology was no match for whatever these aliens possessed. Amidst the growing tension, protests erupted worldwide. Crowds gathered in major cities chanting slogans like "We deserve answers" and "Fight back or step aside." Governments struggled to maintain order, issuing statements urging calm while scrambling behind closed doors to formulate a response. Conspiracy theories flourished, blaming everything from secret government experiments to extraterrestrial collusion. Fringe groups took matters into their own hands, targeting infrastructure they believed was responsible for humanity's vulnerability. Power plants were sabotaged, communication towers destroyed, and highways blocked. Chaos reigned, fueled by fear and mistrust. Dr. Emily Carter watched all of this unfold from her underground lab, where she and her team worked tirelessly on the Quantum Disruptor Array, QDA. News reports played constantly on a small TV mounted in the corner, providing updates on the alien activities and public reactions. Emily tried to tune out the noise, focusing instead on the task at hand. Every failed simulation, every recalibration, brought them closer to a solution. Or so she told herself. Yet, even she couldn't ignore the weight of what was happening outside. One evening, after another long day of testing, Alex Chen approached her desk. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "Emily," he said quietly, "do you think we're wasting our time? I mean, look at what's happening out there. People are losing hope." Emily looked up from her notes, meeting his gaze with unwavering determination. "Hope isn't something we can afford to lose," she replied firmly. "Yes, things seem bleak right now, but history has shown us that innovation often comes from desperation. We have to believe we can find a way." Alex sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I want to believe you, but what if we're wrong? What if this thing doesn't work? Then we'll figure something else out," Emily said simply. She stood up, walking over to the prototype sitting in the center of the room. Its giant satellite dish gleamed under the fluorescent lights, wires snaking across the floor like veins connecting it to various consoles. This is more than just a machine, Alex. It's proof that we're capable of thinking beyond conventional limits. If nothing else, it shows we haven't given up. Her words seemed to reassure him slightly, though doubt still lingered in his expression. Together, they returned to work, adjusting frequencies, recalibrating emitters, and running simulations until dawn broke through the cracks in the ceiling. Progress was slow, and setbacks frequent, but each success, no matter how small, reignited their resolve. Meanwhile, the aliens continued their taunting displays of dominance. In London, a probe hovered over Big Ben, causing the iconic clock tower to freeze mid-tick before resuming its normal function without explanation. In Tokyo, another probe disrupted electrical grids, plunging the city into darkness for hours. Each incident served as a reminder of humanity's fragility, further eroding morale. Yet amidst the fear, stories of resilience began to emerge. A group of engineers in India developed makeshift EMP devices in hopes of disabling the probes, while a community in Brazil organized nightly vigils, lighting candles to symbolize unity and resistance. Back at the lab, Emily received a call from General Marcus Hale. His voice was tense, almost frantic. "Carter, we need results, and fast. The aliens are getting bolder. We've intercepted communications suggesting they're planning something big." Emily clenched the phone tightly, her mind racing. "How much time do we have?" "A week, maybe less," the general replied grimly. "After that, we may not have a choice but to surrender." The line went dead, leaving Emily standing frozen. In the middle of the lab, surrender. The word hit her like a punch to the gut. For years, she had dedicated her life to pushing boundaries, exploring possibilities others deemed impossible. To give up now, to let humanity bow to an alien force, was unthinkable. Summoning her team, Emily laid out the situation. "We're running out of time," she admitted, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "But we can't afford to panic. From this moment forward, we work around the clock. No breaks, no excuses. This device has to be ready by the deadline, no matter what." Her words galvanized the group. They doubled their efforts, working in shifts to ensure continuous progress. Sleep became a luxury few could afford, coffee pots perpetually bubbling away in the background. Arguments erupted over technical details. Tempers flared during failed tests. But through it all, a shared sense of purpose kept them moving forward. On the fifth night, disaster struck. A critical component overheated during a test run, causing a minor explosion that sent shards of metal flying across the room. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured, but the damage to the prototype was significant. As smoke filled the air, Emily surveyed the wreckage, her heart sinking. Days of work had been undone in an instant. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the lab. Then Alex spoke, his voice trembling with emotion. "What do we do now?" Emily took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. "We rebuild," she said finally, "and we do it faster than ever before." With renewed determination, the team sprang into action, salvaging parts from backup units and scavenging materials from nearby facilities. They pieced the QDA back, together bit by bit. By the end of the sixth night, the prototype was operational again, better than before thanks to improvements made during repairs. As dawn broke on the seventh day, Emily stepped outside the lab for the first time in nearly a week. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain. She looked up at the sky where the alien ship loomed like a dark cloud. Somewhere within its metallic shell lay the key to humanity's survival, or destruction. Either way, the coming days would decide the fate of billions. Returning inside, Emily addressed her team one final time. "Whatever happens next," she said, her voice filled with quiet strength, "know that we gave everything we had. We didn't wait for someone else to save us. We fought back, with science, with creativity, and with hope." Her words resonated deeply, lifting spirits even as uncertainty loomed ahead. With the QDA loaded onto a transport truck, the team prepared to deploy it to a remote desert location chosen for its strategic advantage. As they packed up the lab, Emily allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. Failure was still possible, perhaps even likely. But as she glanced around at the faces of her colleagues, exhausted yet determined, she realized something important. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't the device they had built. It was their refusal to give up, even when faced with overwhelming odds. Hours later, as the convoy carrying the QDA sped toward its destination, Emily sat in the passenger seat staring out the window. The landscape blurred past, barren and desolate. Yet amidst the emptiness, she felt a flicker of optimism, a belief that humanity's story was far from over. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. And that, she thought, might just be enough to tip the scales in their favor. The journey to the desert was tense and exhausting. The convoy carrying the Quantum Disruptor Array, QDA, moved under the cover of darkness, its path illuminated only by faint moonlight and the occasional flicker of headlights. Soldiers flanked, the vehicles, their weapons at the ready, scanning the horizon for any sign of trouble. Despite the secrecy surrounding the mission, rumors had spread like wildfire. Rumors about a secret weapon that could turn the tide against the aliens. Some believed it. Others dismissed it as wishful thinking. Either way, the pressure on Dr. Emily Carter and her team was immense. Emily sat in the lead vehicle, clutching a clipboard filled with notes and calculations. Her mind raced with possibilities, both good and bad. What if the QDA failed? What if the aliens detected them before they were ready? She forced herself to focus on the present, reminding herself that worry wouldn't change the outcome. Beside her, Alex Chen stared out the window, his face pale and drawn. He hadn't slept properly in days, and the weight of their task was etched into every line on his face. "Do you think this will work?" Alex asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Emily turned to him, her expression steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "It has to," she replied simply. "We've come too far to give up now." Alex nodded, though doubt lingered in his eyes. "I just hope we're not walking into a trap." His words hung heavy in the air, unspoken fears shared by everyone in the convoy. The aliens had proven themselves unpredictable, their technology far beyond anything humanity could comprehend. For all they knew, the mothership could already be aware of their movements, waiting to strike the moment they arrived. Yet there was no turning back. This was humanity's last stand, and failure wasn't an option. By dawn, the convoy reached its destination, a remote stretch of desert chosen for its isolation and proximity to the alien ship. The landscape was barren, dotted with jagged rocks and endless stretches of sand. It was the kind of place where nothing lived, yet somehow it felt alive with anticipation. As the trucks came to a halt, soldiers sprang into action, setting up perimeter defenses while engineers began assembling the QDA. The device itself was a marvel of human ingenuity, though its true capabilities remained untested. Standing nearly 20 feet tall, the giant satellite dish gleamed in the early morning light, its surface covered in intricate patterns of wires and sensors. Technicians worked quickly, connecting power sources and calibrating emitters. Every movement was precise, every decision deliberate. Time was running out, and they couldn't afford mistakes. Emily walked among them, offering guidance and encouragement. Her presence seemed to calm nerves even as tension crackled in the air. She checked each component herself, ensuring everything was in place. When she reached the central console, she paused, staring at the array of buttons and dials. This was the culmination of months of hard work, sleepless nights, and countless sacrifices. If this didn't work, humanity would have no fallback plan. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the team completed their preparations. The QDA stood ready, its dish pointed skyward, waiting for the signal to fire. General Marcus Hale arrived. Shortly after, stepping out of a military jeep with a grim expression, he approached Emily, his boots crunching against the dry earth. "Dr. Carter," he said, his voice low but firm. "Are you sure about this?" Emily met his gaze without hesitation. "No, sir," she admitted. "But I believe it's our best shot." The general nodded, though his jaw tightened. "All right, let's do this." With that, He gave the order to initiate the final phase. Soldiers took their positions, rifles trained on the horizon, while technicians monitored the QDA's systems. Emily stood beside the control panel, her hands hovering over the activation switch. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing like a drum roll. Around her, the world seemed to hold its breath. Meanwhile, in cities across the globe, people watched live broadcasts of the unfolding events. News outlets had caught wind of the operation, speculating wildly about what was happening in the desert. Some claimed it was a desperate gamble, while others hailed it as humanity's last hope. Social media buzzed with prayers, messages of support, and cynical predictions of doom. In New York City, crowds gathered in Times Square, staring up at massive screens showing footage of the alien ship. Children clung to their parents, tears streaming down their faces. In Tokyo, temples overflowed with worshippers seeking divine intervention. Humanity held on to hope, fragile as it was. Back in the desert, the aliens made their move. A smaller probe descended from the mothership, its sleek form cutting through the sky like a blade. It hovered silently above the QDA, scanning the area. With eerie precision, soldiers tensed, fingers tightening around triggers, but the probe didn't attack. Instead, it broadcasted a message loud and clear. Your efforts are futile. Surrender now, or face annihilation. The words sent a shiver down Emily's spine, but she refused to let fear take hold. Turning to Alex, who stood nearby, she said, "Prepare the system. We're firing." "But what if they retaliate?" Alex asked, his voice trembling. "They'll retaliate either way," Emily replied. "At least this way we go down fighting." Her determination steeled the resolve of those around her. Technicians adjusted frequencies, fine-tuning the QDA's settings for maximum impact. Soldiers braced themselves, knowing full well they might not survive the next few minutes. The probe continued to hover, its metallic surface glinting ominously in the sunlight. Finally, everything was ready. Emily placed her hand on the activation switch, her mind racing with thoughts of everything that had led to this moment. Images flashed through her head, long nights in the lab, arguments over technical details, moments of doubt followed by bursts of inspiration. She thought of her family, her friends, everyone counting on her to succeed. Taking a deep breath, she looked at General Hale, who gave her a curt nod. "Do it," he said. With a final glance at the alien probe, Emily pressed the switch. The QDA hummed to life, its dish glowing with an otherworldly blue light. A thin beam shot upward, invisible to the naked eye but detectable on thermal imaging equipment. For a split second, nothing happened. Then the probe shuddered violently, its once smooth surface rippling like liquid metal. Soldiers shielded their eyes as a blinding flash erupted, followed by a deafening roar. When the light faded, the probe was gone, disintegrated into nothingness. Cheers erupted among the humans, shouts of triumph ringing out across the desert. But the celebration was short-lived. High above, the mothership stirred, its massive hull shifting ominously. Sensors detected increased energy readings, suggesting the aliens were preparing for a counterattack. Emily knew they had only bought themselves a little more time, but it was enough. "Retreat," General Hale barked, ushering soldiers toward the waiting vehicles. "Get the QDA loaded and ready for transport." The team scrambled to comply, dismantling components and loading them onto trucks as quickly as possible. Overhead, the mothership loomed larger than ever, casting a shadow over the landscape. Emily climbed into the lead vehicle, her heart still racing. They had struck a blow, but the war was far from over. As the convoy sped away, leaving behind clouds of dust and the lingering scent of scorched metal, Emily allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. The QDA had worked, better than she had dared to hope. But it was only one step in a much larger battle. The aliens weren't defeated. They were merely provoked. And when they retaliated, humanity would need more than just clever gadgets to survive. Looking around at her exhausted but determined team, Emily felt a spark of hope. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. Not through brute force, but through creativity and resilience. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew they would face them together. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they stood a chance. The road ahead would be long and fraught with danger, but one thing was certain. Humanity wasn't done fighting. Not yet. The aftermath of the QDA's first successful test was both exhilarating and terrifying. The alien probe had been obliterated in a dazzling display of light and energy, leaving behind nothing but silence and drifting ash. For a fleeting moment, humanity dared to hope that victory might be within reach. But as the convoy carrying the Quantum Disruptor Array, QDA, sped away from the desert battlefield, it became painfully clear that their triumph was far from decisive. The mothership loomed larger than ever above Earth's atmosphere, its surface rippling with ominous flashes of light. Whatever retaliation the aliens planned, it would come soon, and it would likely dwarf anything humanity had faced so far. Inside the lead vehicle, Dr. Emily Carter sat gripping the edge of her seat, her knuckles white. Her mind replayed the events of the past hour, the hum of the QDA powering up, the blinding flash as the beam struck the probe, and the deafening roar that followed. It had worked, beyond her wildest expectations, but now came the hardest part. They had proven they could harm the aliens, but that small victory had undoubtedly drawn their full attention. Retaliation was inevitable, and when it came, humanity would need more than just one weapon to survive. Alex Chen broke the tense silence beside her. "Do you think they'll come after us?" Emily glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "They already are," she said quietly. "That ship isn't just sitting there idly. Every second we waste gives them time to prepare." Her words hung heavy in the air, punctuated by the rumble of engines and the crunch of tires on gravel. Outside, the barren desert stretched endlessly, offering no cover or protection. Soldiers manning the convoy kept watch, rifles trained on the horizon, though what they expected to fight against remained unclear. The aliens had demonstrated their ability to strike without warning, rendering traditional defenses useless. Humanity's only advantage lay in surprise, and even that was slipping away. General Marcus Hale rode in the second vehicle, his face set in a grim mask. He knew better than anyone how fragile their position truly was. The destruction of the probe had been a morale boost, yes, but it also signaled to the aliens that humanity wasn't entirely helpless. That knowledge could provoke an even fiercer response. As he stared out the window at the endless expanse of sand, his thoughts turned to strategy. How could they leverage this brief window of opportunity? What moves could they make before the aliens retaliated? Back at the lab, which had been hastily converted into a command center, teams of scientists and military personnel worked around the clock to analyze data collected during the test. Early results were promising. The QDA's exotic particle beam had destabilized the probe's molecular structure, causing it to collapse inward upon itself. If the same principle applied to the mothership, humanity might stand a fighting chance. But scaling up the device for use against something so massive posed significant challenges. Power requirements alone were staggering, requiring resources they barely had access to. Time was running out, and every decision mattered. Meanwhile, global reactions to the QDA's success were mixed. News outlets broadcast footage of the probe's destruction, sparking celebrations in some corners of the world while fueling panic in others. Conspiracy theorists claimed the event was staged, arguing that governments couldn't possibly have developed such advanced technology overnight. Others demanded immediate deployment of the QDA against the mothership, ignoring warnings about its limitations. Social media buzzed with conflicting opinions, memes, and doomsday predictions. Amidst the chaos, leaders struggled to maintain order, issuing statements urging calm while secretly preparing for the worst. In New York City, crowds gathered once again in Times Square, staring up at giant screens showing live updates. Some cheered wildly, convinced the tide had turned in humanity's favor. Others wept openly, fearing the aliens' wrath. In Tokyo, Emergency broadcasts instructed citizens to take shelter, while in London, protests erupted outside Parliament, demanding answers about government plans. Fear and uncertainty gripped the planet, exacerbated by the looming presence of the alien ship. For Emily and her team, there was no time to rest. Upon returning to the lab, they immediately began planning their next move. The QDA needed upgrades, better cooling systems, more efficient power sources, and enhanced targeting mechanisms. Technicians worked tirelessly, welding new components, and rewiring circuits under harsh fluorescent lights. Arguments broke out over technical details. Tempers flared during failed tests, but through it all, a shared sense of purpose kept them moving forward. "We can't afford another failure," Emily reminded her team during a late-night meeting. Dark circles ringed her eyes and her voice carried the weight of exhaustion. "If we don't get this right, billions of lives depend on it." No one spoke, but the gravity of her words settled over the room like a physical force. Each person understood the stakes, not just for themselves, but for humanity as a whole. Failure meant extinction. Success meant survival. There was no middle ground. As days passed, progress accelerated. Breakthroughs came in fits and starts, each minor achievement bolstering morale. One technician discovered a way to double the QDA's output without overloading its systems. Another proposed using satellite arrays to triangulate the mothership's weak points. Slowly but surely, the pieces fell into place. Yet, despite these advances, doubts lingered. Could they really replicate their earlier success against something so vast and powerful? Or had they simply delayed the inevitable? Then came the ultimatum. Late one evening, as technicians fine-tuned the QDA's emitters, the alien voice boomed across every communication channel on Earth. "You have defied us," it declared coldly. "For this insolence, your species will be erased. Surrender now or perish." The message sent shockwaves through the lab. Scientists paused mid-task, soldiers tightened their grips on weapons, and civilians huddled together in fear. This wasn't just a threat. It was a promise. The aliens had grown tired of playing games and their patience had run out. Emily stood frozen in front of the control panel, her heart pounding. She had known this moment would come, yet hearing those words made it feel real in a way she hadn't anticipated. Turning to Alex, who looked equally shaken, she said firmly, "We're not giving up." "But what if they attack before we're ready?" Alex asked, his voice trembling. "They will," Emily replied. "And when they do, we'll be waiting." With renewed urgency, the team redoubled their efforts. Sleep became a distant memory. Meals were eaten standing up, and conversations revolved solely around work. Every second counted. Outside, the alien ship grew brighter, pulsating with energy that cast eerie shadows across the sky. Sensors detected increased activity, suggesting the aliens were mobilizing for a final assault. Finally, after countless, sleepless nights and endless recalibrations, the QDA was ready. Standing tall in the center of the lab, its gleaming dish pointed skyward, the device represented humanity's last hope. Emily walked around it one final time, checking connections and ensuring everything was secure. When she reached the control panel, she paused, staring at the array of switches and dials. This was it, the culmination of months of hard work, sacrifice, and sheer determination. General Hale entered the lab, his expression grim but resolute. "It's time," he said simply. Emily nodded, her jaw tightening. "Let's finish this." Together, they led the team to a remote location chosen for its proximity to the mothership. Soldiers formed a protective perimeter while technicians positioned the QDA, angling it toward the alien vessel. Overhead, the ship loomed ominously, its metallic surface shimmering like liquid mercury. Energy readings spiked dangerously high, indicating the aliens were preparing to strike. Tension crackled in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. "Everyone, take cover," General Hale barked, ushering non-essential personnel to safety. Only Emily and a handful of key operators remained near the QDA, their faces pale but determined. Emily placed her hand on the activation switch, her pulse racing. Around her, the world seemed eerily quiet, as though holding its breath. Taking a deep breath, she glanced at Alex, who gave her a nod of encouragement. Then, without hesitation, she pressed the button. The QDA roared to life, its dish glowing, with an intense blue light. A thin beam shot upward, invisible to the naked eye but detectable on thermal imaging equipment. Everyone watched, hearts pounding, as the beam connected with the mothership. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, cracks began to form along the ship's surface, spreading outward like spider webs. A low rumble echoed through the air, growing louder and more menacing with each passing second. Suddenly, the mothership shuddered violently, its once impenetrable hull collapsing inward. A deafening explosion rocked the sky, sending shock waves rippling across the landscape. Soldiers ducked for cover as debris rained down harmlessly, the massive vessel disintegrating into nothingness. Cheers erupted among the humans, shouts of triumph ringing out across the desert. Against all odds, they had done it. But Emily didn't celebrate. Instead, she stood silently, watching the remnants of the alien ship fade into the atmosphere. Victory felt hollow, overshadowed by the enormity of what they had just achieved. Turning to Alex, she said softly, "This isn't the end. It's just the beginning." He nodded, understanding her meaning. Humanity had proven itself. The destruction of the alien mothership was nothing short of miraculous. As its massive form collapsed inward and disintegrated into the atmosphere, humanity collectively held its breath. For weeks, fear had gripped the planet, fear of domination, annihilation, and helplessness. But now, as the remnants of the alien vessel drifted harmlessly away, cheers erupted across the globe. Soldiers in the desert hugged one another, tears streaming down their faces. Civilians watching live broadcasts screamed with joy, waving flags and lighting fireworks. Social media exploded with messages of gratitude and celebration, hailing the Quantum Disruptor Array, QDA, as humanity's salvation. Yet, amidst the jubilation, Dr. Emily Carter stood apart, her expression thoughtful rather than triumphant. She watched the horizon, where streaks of sunlight pierced through the dissipating clouds of alien debris. The victory felt monumental, yes, but it also felt fragile. Destroying the mothership didn't erase the reality that Earth was not alone in the universe. If anything, this encounter proved that humanity was just a small piece of a much larger puzzle. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, other civilizations might exist. Some friendly, others hostile. Humanity couldn't afford to rest on its laurels. "Emily," Alex Chen called softly from behind her. "Are you okay?" She turned to face him, forcing a small smile. "I'm fine," she said, though her tone betrayed her lingering unease. "It's just, we've won this battle, but I don't think we've seen the last of them." Alex frowned, glancing up at the sky. "You really think they'll come back?" "I don't know," Emily admitted. "But what I do know is that today proves something important. We're capable of defending ourselves if we work together. That's worth remembering." Her words resonated deeply, not just with Alex, but with everyone who heard them. General Marcus Hale approached, his usual stoic demeanor softened by exhaustion and relief. "Dr. Carter," he began, his voice gruff but sincere, "you've done something extraordinary. Humanity owes you a debt it can never repay." Emily shook her head, brushing off the praise. "This wasn't about me. It was about all of us. The scientists, the soldiers, the engineers, the civilians who kept believing even when things looked hopeless. This victory belongs to everyone." The general nodded, though his eyes remained wary. "Still, we can't let our guard down. Whatever those aliens were doing here, they weren't acting alone. There's more to this story, and we need to be ready for whatever comes next." Emily agreed wholeheartedly. Over the following days, governments worldwide convened emergency summits to discuss the implications of the alien encounter. Leaders debated how to prepare for future threats while also addressing the damage caused during the crisis. Cities ravaged by riots and sabotage required rebuilding, Economies destabilized by panic needed stabilization. Yet despite these challenges, a newfound sense of unity emerged. For the first time in history, nations put aside their differences, pooling resources and knowledge to strengthen Earth's defenses. At the heart of this effort was the QDA. Scientists studied the device meticulously, analyzing every detail of its design and operation. While it had proven effective against the alien ship, improvements were necessary to ensure it could handle larger-scale threats. Research teams worked tirelessly, refining power sources, enhancing targeting systems, and developing portable versions that could be deployed globally. Military strategists incorporated the QDA into defense plans, training soldiers to operate it alongside conventional weapons. Though no one knew when or if the aliens would return, humanity refused to be caught unprepared again. Meanwhile, public interest in space exploration surged. People wanted answers. Who were the aliens? Where did they come from? Were they truly gone? Governments launched initiatives to study the wreckage left behind, hoping to unlock secrets about alien technology and culture. Universities opened new programs focused on astrobiology, quantum mechanics, and interstellar communication. Private companies invested heavily in space travel, eager to push humanity's reach further than ever before. The alien encounter had awakened a collective curiosity, a desire to understand the universe and humanity's place within it. For Emily, life after the battle became a whirlwind of interviews, lectures, and award ceremonies. She was hailed as a hero, her name plastered across headlines worldwide. Yet, despite the accolades, she remained grounded, using her platform to advocate for scientific innovation and global cooperation. During one particularly memorable speech at the United Nations, she addressed world leaders directly. "We survived because we chose to innovate instead of surrender," she said, her voice steady and impassioned. "But survival isn't enough. We must use this moment to build a better future, not just for ourselves, but for generations to come. Let's invest in education, in research, in projects that bring us closer to understanding the cosmos. Because the truth is, the universe is vast and we are small, but together we are strong." Her words inspired millions, sparking movements for change. Schools introduced STEM-focused curriculums, encouraging young minds to dream big. Space agencies collaborated on ambitious missions, sending probes deeper into the solar system than ever before. Environmental efforts gained momentum, driven by the realization that protecting Earth was crucial, not just for survival, but for thriving in an uncertain future. Back in her lab, Emily continued working tirelessly, leading a team dedicated to advancing the QDA's capabilities. Though the immediate threat had passed, she knew complacency was humanity's greatest enemy. Late nights blurred into early mornings as she pored over data, ran simulations, and brainstormed ideas. Alex stayed by her side, his skepticism replaced by unwavering dedication. Together, they pushed boundaries, exploring possibilities once thought impossible. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the lab, Emily paused to reflect. The room buzzed with activity, technicians fine-tuning equipment and researchers debating theories. Despite the chaos, a sense of purpose permeated the air. Humanity had faced extinction and emerged stronger, not because of brute force, but because of ingenuity, resilience, and hope. "You think we're ready?" Alex asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Emily smiled faintly, setting down her clipboard. "Ready for what? Another invasion? Another challenge?" "Probably not, but does it matter? We'll figure it out when it comes. That's what humans do. We adapt, we learn, we grow." Alex chuckled, shaking his head. "You always sound so sure." "That's because I am," Emily replied, her gaze drifting toward the window. Stars twinkled in the night sky, countless and infinite. We've barely scratched the surface of what's out there, and yeah, maybe some of it will scare us. Maybe some of it will try to hurt us, but none of that changes the fact that we're explorers. We've always been explorers, and no matter what happens, we'll keep looking up. Her words echoed through the lab, resonating with everyone who heard them. Outside, the world moved forward, healing and rebuilding. Inside, the pursuit of knowledge continued, fueled by a shared belief in humanity's potential. The alien encounter had been a wake-up call, a reminder of how fragile life was, yet how resilient humanity could be. As Emily returned to her work, she allowed herself a brief moment of optimism. The road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, filled with unknowns and uncertainties. But humanity had proven itself capable of greatness. With courage, creativity, and determination, they would face whatever lay beyond the stars and thrive. And somewhere, deep in the recesses of space, perhaps another civilization watched, waiting to see what humanity would do next.